Most people believe 59.5 is a hard wall between them and their own retirement savings. It isn't, not for everyone. Quick note, not financial advice, just a real current IRS provision that quietly moves that wall up by more than 4 years for some people, and the one common, well-intentioned mistake that erases it completely. The rule most people know is simple and mostly accurate. Pull money out of a 401k before 59.5, and the IRS adds a 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of whatever ordinary income tax is already owed. That part of the story is true for the overwhelming majority of people, the overwhelming majority of the time. It's just not the whole story. Most people never test that wall directly. They hear 59.5 once early in their career from a parent or a benefits orientation slideshow, and then simply carry that number around for the next 3 decades as a fixed fact about their own money, never quite verifying whether it applies to every situation the same way. There's a specific, narrower provision called the Rule of 55. If you separate from an employer, quit, get laid off, get fired, retire, it doesn't matter which. During or after the calendar year you turn 55, the IRS allows penalty-free withdrawals directly from that specific employer's 401k or 403b. Not any 401k, not an IRA. That one account, tied to that one employer, the one you just left. Picture the moment this actually lands for someone. A round of layoffs sweeps through a company, and someone who just turned 55 that January gets a severance package instead of a pink slip with nothing attached. The instinct is pure panic. Mortgage, health insurance, 4 years until the number everyone always quoted as the real retirement age. Then a benefits rep mentions, almost as an aside, that the age on the layoff paperwork happens to unlock something most employees never learn about until exactly this moment. There's a specific kind of disbelief that follows a sentence like that. It gets asked twice, in slightly different phrasing, the way people repeat back good news to make sure they heard it correctly. The benefits rep isn't guessing or being generous with the interpretation. This exact provision has sat in the tax code for years, quietly available to a fairly narrow group of people who happen to leave a job at exactly the right age, in exactly the right way. Here's where the actual math starts to matter. Say retiring at 55 instead of 59.5 means bridging 4.5 years on savings before other retirement income kicks in, and that bridge costs $45,000 a year to live on. That's $202,500 pulled from savings over the gap. Withdraw that same amount without qualifying for the Rule of 55, and the 10% penalty alone comes to $20,250. Money that simply doesn't have to be paid if the withdrawal comes from the right account under the right conditions. That $20,250 number isn't a worst-case scare figure. It's just what 10% of $202,500 actually is. Run through the exact bridge period between the age most people leave a job like this and the age everyone assumes is the real cutoff. The tax on the withdrawal itself still applies either way. The Rule of 55 waives the penalty, not the income tax. That distinction matters, and it's worth being precise about it instead of overselling what this actually does. Now here's the part that turns this from a simple rule into something worth genuinely paying attention to. The single most common way people accidentally lose access to the Rule of 55 isn't ignorance. It's good financial habits, applied at exactly the wrong moment. Picture a slightly different version of that same person, a few weeks after the layoff. A friend, or a well-meaning financial article, or just old muscle memory says the responsible thing to do with an old 401k is roll it into an IRA. Consolidate everything, simplify the accounts, stop paying whatever fees the old employer's plan charges. It sounds like exactly the kind of tidy, adult decision a financial advice column would applaud. The rollover form takes 10 minutes to fill out online. There's nothing careless about that decision, on its own terms. Consolidating old accounts is genuinely good advice in most situations for most people at most ages. That's exactly what makes this particular mistake so easy to make. It isn't a mistake born from ignoring good financial advice. It's a mistake born from following it 1 calendar year too early. That 10-minute form also quietly closes the door on the Rule of 55, permanently for that money. The provision only ever applies to the specific former employer's plan the separation happened from. The instant those funds move into an IRA, they become subject to the ordinary IRA withdrawal rules. The same 10% penalty before 59.5 that this whole rule was supposed to sidestep. Nobody sends a warning before the transfer processes. The form doesn't ask if this was the plan being relied on for early access. There's a second twist worth knowing before assuming this is simple. Many 401k plans don't allow partial withdrawals once someone has separated from the company. Some require the entire balance to come out at once, which can trigger a much bigger tax bill in a single year than a series of smaller withdrawals would have. This isn't a reason to avoid the rule of 55. It's a reason to call the plan administrator and ask exactly how withdrawals work under that specific plan, before assuming it'll work the same way it did for a coworker at a different company. That phone call itself is almost anticlimactic compared to what's riding on it. It's a short, slightly bureaucratic conversation, confirming account eligibility, asking whether partial withdrawals are allowed, requesting the specific separation from service paperwork the plan needs on file. Nobody on that call is going to describe it as the moment that saved $20,250. It just quietly is. There's a separate, even earlier version of this same idea that applies to a much smaller group of people. State and local public safety employees, police officers, and firefighters covered by a governmental retirement plan can access that plan penalty-free starting at age 50 instead of 55. The IRS extends the same age 50 exception to certain federal roles by name: federal law enforcement officers, federal corrections officers, Customs and Border Protection officers, federal firefighters, and air traffic controllers, and a 2022 law extended it further to private sector firefighters specifically. Picture a firefighter putting in the paperwork the week they turn 50, decades into a career that started right out of the academy, 9 years before most of their friends outside the department can touch a dime of their own retirement savings without a penalty. This specific plan tied to this specific employer is already fully accessible. It's the same underlying logic as the rule of 55, just built for a narrower list of jobs the IRS has specifically named in the tax code. That firefighter's spouse hearing the number out loud for the first time has roughly the same reaction as anyone hearing about the rule of 55 for the first time: a beat of silence, then the same question everyone eventually asks: why doesn't anyone teach this? The honest answer is that it's specific enough and situational enough that most general financial advice simply skips past it in favor of broader rules that apply to more people, more of the time. None of this makes the decision to retire early automatically a good one, and it's worth being honest about that too. Pulling $202,500 out of an account at 55 means that money stops compounding 4.5 years earlier than it otherwise would have. The same kind of growth this channel has walked through in other videos, quietly lost. Not because of any penalty, but because the money simply isn't sitting in the market anymore. The rule of 55 removes a specific IRS penalty. It doesn't remove the ordinary trade-off of spending savings down instead of letting them keep growing. Someone weighing this decision honestly has to hold both numbers at once. The $20,250 penalty genuinely avoided by using this correctly, and the separate, quieter cost of that same $202,500 no longer compounding in the market for 4.5 years. Both are real, neither one cancels the other out. The rule of 55 makes early access cheaper. It was never designed to make early access free. There's also a version of this that works even after leaving the qualifying job. Someone can separate at 55, use the rule of 55 on that old 401k, and then go take another job entirely, even open a new workplace plan there, and the exception on the original account keeps working, right up until 59.5, as long as that specific money never gets rolled into an IRA or a new employer's plan in the meantime. It's a narrower door than most people assume, but it stays open longer than a lot of people realize. The reason this particular rule stays so quiet isn't that it's obscure or hard to find. Anyone who searches for it can find the exact language within a few minutes. It stays quiet because the moment it would actually matter, a layoff, a retirement, a sudden decision to leave a job at 55, is rarely the moment someone is calmly researching IRS withdrawal provisions. It's usually the moment someone is doing exactly what sounds responsible, calling a former employer's HR department and asking how to roll everything over as cleanly as possible. There's an entire industry built around the instinct to consolidate, simplify, and roll everything into one clean, easy-to-manage account. Almost all of that instinct is correct almost all of the time. This is one of the rare specific exceptions where the tidy answer and the correct answer point in opposite directions for a few years, and the only way to know which situation is being faced is to ask the question directly instead of assuming. Here's the actual thread running underneath this entire rule. Being financially responsible and being technically correct about an IRS provision are not always the same action, and the gap between them, in this specific case, comes out to a very real $20,250 over one plausible 4.5-year bridge. Bigger or smaller depending on the exact numbers, but real either way. The fix isn't complicated once it's known. It's just a single phone call to a plan administrator, made before signing anything that moves the money anywhere else. If a 55th birthday is arriving alongside a layoff, a retirement, or simply a decision to walk away from a job, the one question worth asking before touching anything is whether that specific account, sitting with that specific former employer, still needs to sit exactly where it is for a while longer. That single question is the entire difference between paying an unnecessary penalty and never paying it at all. If this is the kind of thing you think about, stick around. That's basically what this channel is. And before you go, did you already know about the rule of 55? Or is this the first time you're hearing it? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.